Hey, what is up? What is up, YouTube boxing family? It is I, K-Rod here, back at it with another video for y'all today. I am going to make a good video for y'all today. This is going to be some good long-form content. Yeah, we got a Fight Night, champion video, doing like a little boxing simulation video, commentary in the background. Shout out to Boxing Fight Simulations. Please go subscribe to this YouTuber. Great YouTuber. I like watching him a lot. And, we got the legendary Floyd Mayweather going up against Terrence Bud Crawford, the three division undisputed world champion, and probably by far the best in our era. So, yeah, man. I got a pretty good video for y'all today. And what we're going to be talking about today is not just specifically Terrence Crawford nor Floyd Mayweather, as I would definitely like to talk about that fight. I think that fight would be huge if Floyd Mayweather decides to just come back out of, retirement and just say, you know what, let me just fight Bud and I can just make a lot of money that way. Um no, for today's video we're going to be talking something very special. And this has been on my mind for quite a while. And we're gonna be talking about Mexican boxing. We're gonna be discussing about why aren't there more black Mexican talent in the sport of boxing? This has always struck my mind because, like, granted, a lot of people don't understand demographics in other parts of what the world, and people just think like if you're from a certain part of what the world, that's just how everybody is out there. Granted, there are cultures in the world where people have certain demographics put in place, but that doesn't entirely mean everybody is to be that same ethnic demographic. Like, for example, if I meet, an Italian, not all Italians look white to be purely white. There's some Italians that look, that look, you know, Arabic Italian. Maybe some of them that could be, a Jewish Italian. You know, there's like different, subnet groups of different heritages where that people go out of their way to breed with other, ethnic races. And Italians are still prominent within the culture, but when you like minus out, let the status identity political mindset out of that, like everybody has mixes of different bloodlines per se. It's not just one strict bloodline to say that you're just an Irishman and all Irish people look to be ginger haired, brown eyed people, or let's just say blonde hair, brown eyes, or let's just say, I don't even know, brunette hair with some, I don't know. Like, I mean, like everybody has different blends of like where they come from, and it's not always a one-to-one match because everybody's different. Everybody has their own different heritages and different lineages of where they, of where they like originate from. Granted, there are certain parts of what the world that people do come from homogenous backgrounds, but the reason why that's to be the case is because people in that background keep themselves isolated, where people don't really, integrate with too many other people from other parts of what the world. And that's fine. And I mean, this is not even to just even talk about race alone, but when you look at certain parts of what the world, you do tend to see that other parts of what the world you know does not subjugate themselves to just being isolated to only their own people. Therefore, culturally, everybody kind of thinks, entirely different based off of how they see things. Hold on, give me 1 second. All right, but yeah, that's pretty much what I wanted to kind of say with the whole race, like, the whole racial identity dilemma nonsense. Because a lot of people like to be biased. A lot of people bring their stupid beliefs into the picture to say, well, no, this is how certain people are, where they're born from this part of what the world, that being this culture and that culture. And it's all, it's all malarkey garbage at the end of the day. So that's just how I see it. But yeah, let's talk some boxing. Let's talk about Mexican boxing because I've always been interested to talk about this topic. And whenever people do talk about Mexican boxing, a lot of people just only talk about the Mexicans that they do like. And that's fine and all. But whenever people bring up the racial component in boxing, whenever they're talking about, what, like, where you come from, where your heritage is at, and what people represent out of your bloodline, most people, specifically in Mexican boxing, most likely go for the people that are either the white Mexicans or usually the brown skin, American Indian looking ones. Typically by that, particular standard. That's really how most of what the Mexican greats are always to be viewed in certain cases. It's not always like a 1-to-1 match. I mean, every Mexican is different. Every person has different means of like how they see things, and it's not always every Mexican that does look to be like your average, Hispanic per se. That's just mixed with Spanish or you know like Spanish and American Indian heritage per se. Um, some other people within Mexican culture are quote unquote Asians that are considered to be chinitos or I think chinganos. I mean that's like that's what some other people may say with I want to say with the Asian looking people, they say chinganos or chingon or chinito. I think that's the particular term that they use. But specifically when it comes to like the identity of boxing politics in terms of like what people think out of a regular Mexican, obviously with today's standards with Canelo, there are some good prominent white Mexicans out there that are good, but it's like they're not really that heavily known, and not a lot of people really go out of what their way to say, okay, like, this is why people mess with Mexican boxing because of X, Y, and Z of these fighters, and that's never to be the case. Everybody's different. Everybody has their own identity of like where they come from, but in terms of that particular mindset within the Mexican fan base, that's just how they think to a good degree of them. But in terms of the Afro Hispanic population, it always makes me wonder, like, why aren't they being pushed more? Why isn't there more talent out there where the Black Mexican talent can very well grow, and I'm pretty sure it's out there. It's just like, why don't we just know about it more? And like a lot of detractors or haters would say, well, nah, man, there's no black people in Mexico. Black people don't really compete that much in sports anyway. In the Central Hispanic Americas, blah blah blah. Like, I mean, like you have like those idiots that like to say that. And then, even specifically when it comes to Mexico, like, some Mexicans will just say, well, black people are not really, they are in Mexico per se. And I mean, that's a lie because it's like, the, Afro Mexican population is at least, I want to say, 1.6 million. That is a pretty big number, and the reason why that I had stated that is because I had done research on it in the past, and I did find out that Black Mexicans do have a pretty good presence within the Mexican region. I think it's more to like the coastal area, right by Baja California. So maybe that's probably where they're usually are at. Maybe like by the other side of like the countryside, but they're more to like the coastal area. And I'm not gonna go into like the historical context of like Black Mexicans and all that, but just to kind of simplify it, like Black people, they've been in Mexico for quite a while. Obviously predating to the, Spanish like invasion. A lot of slaves have actually been out there, and historically, a lot of Black people have made their presence within Mexico, predating to the Mexican Revolution, where a lot of Black people actually had fought and sacrificed their lives up against, the Spanish um, during the Mexican the Mexican Revolutionary War. But sadly, a lot of their presence has never been recognized because the Mexican government had tried to silence them and try to make them, I want to say like more like outsiders or to be like, untouchables, which is kind of really disgusting and evil because it's like the Mexican government did not just do it by themselves, in which, I'm a libertarian because I don't like government, but I'll just kind of make this short and sweet. Like, their support came from more than just their own like people that were let the Creole mix, Mexicans. Like, their support also came from to a certain degree, like, like you had, Puerto Rican support, like people like Antonio Valero. Oh, hold on, let me pause that. All right, I'm back. Yeah, so like back to what I was saying, just to summarize about Black Mexicans. Their contributions have been made heavily for the Mexican, for the Mexican population. Even, before and after the Mexican, Revolutionary War, to defeat Spain. But, that the Mexican people did not just easily win, that the war by just having let their own Mexican, blooded people that were, let the brown skinned Mexicans. And then, you had like a good number of like white Creole mixed Mexicans, but you had, political leaders like, Antonio Valero de Bernabe, from Puerto Rico that actually like assisted in fighting the battle. And I want to say support from South America with Simon Bolivar. I think Bolivar also supported Mexicans. Yeah, yeah, he supported Mexico's, Mexico's independence as far as like what he did. Even though that Mexican Independence Day is coming, but I just kind of wanted to just add that in there. But as far as like the black African presence within Mexico, Africans have played a huge sacrifice for Mexican culture. A lot of their bloodline in terms of, influences that they have with their music, clothing in certain cases, but also I was gonna say the food too. I mean, black people have had really huge influences with Mexican food, especially with, Jamaica, horchata, um, plantains. I mean, that's spread out all throughout, the Central and South and Caribbean America. So, plantains are very, influential with a lot of African presence. So, I mean, yeah, there's like a lot of great things that, that a lot of blacks have done. Like just in terms of like bringing what they had, like, from their own homeland, just to incorporate that into their own everyday living. So, yeah, as far as specifically with black Mexicans, ever since then, there's really never been that much presence on the black Mexican people in terms of sports. I think when it comes to boxing, a lot of Mexicans basically focus on their own people that they're trying to hype up. And I think that's pretty much just a natural concept of just how they are. Because a lot of black Mexicans, if you do think about it, they're not in it to really like make themselves known within a presence of boxing. Like, the Mexicans are just trying to back up their guy, so therefore they can be recognized themselves too. Because if you think about it, like with boxing being such a being such a very, you know a very crooked business with some bad people in the sport that make it horrible. A lot of those people that want to make it big, they have to play those, backstabbing games with certain people so they can try to move forward with their own crew. And I think that's really how it is, especially with a lot of heritages from different lineage backgrounds where people want to go their own way, and then the minute something happens, somebody's always wanting to be jealous of you because they don't want to ruin their future of like where they're trying to be, but then they're jealous that you made it to a position of a success compared to them. They didn't. So with black Mexican boxing, I kind of think like in that particular regard, a lot of Mexicans, historically have actually been very divisive up against, a lot of teams that they don't really mess with, especially at the pro level, because, you have so many camps out there, within the Mexican, how should I say, within the Mexican region where they're not really seeing eye to eye with each other. And they like to play their little crew gang games to be like, well, this is my city, that's your city. I don't like fighters that are from, cool, like, like a Culiacan, or some other fighters that are from Jalisco or Juarez or Cozumel. I mean, there's like a whole bunch of, I guess like political beef that certain people have. And I mean, that's like, that's natural within boxing because it's like, certain camps that, like, that you particularly represent for certain gyms. Oh, like, I'm sorry. Um, a lot of fighters don't like you having the spotlight. So, when they're coming from nothing, they have to be very vicious with how they act towards their own. And I think that's the harder part because a lot of the Mexicans that are good, that are not known, they usually end up having to go through the hard way, getting up there in their career. But the Mexicans that are known, that aren't as good, but they're being hyped up to be good, those Mexicans are being given the faster opportunities to fast track their career because they already have those, like, those connections put into place. Hold on. Let me pause. Alright, I'm back. So, yeah, that's pretty much how Mexican boxing really is. Because if you really do think about it, like, especially going back to, like, the really, really old days, like, the very first ever Mexican quote unquote champion, that being Battling Torres, like, he was good, but it's like, was he really considered to be like the best Mexican fighter out there? No, not really. But then eventually, like, other Mexicans came along, but the ones that were really good were actually like the ones that put in a lot of work, and they actually put a lot of dedication and pride into what they do. Like, I mean, for fighters like Salvador Sanchez, Chuchillo Castillo. I think that's his name. I totally forgot his name, but he's that Mexican bantamweight champion that was undisputed back in the two belt era. I mean, he was pretty good. I mean, there are a huge plethora of great Mexican fighters. When you take out, all the hype job, Mexican fighters that weren't good, but they were just being pushed as good fighters. Like, I don't even know. Like, I'm not even. I mean, if we're just specifically just talking about Mexicans from the mainland versus just Mexican Americans, I mean, yeah, I don't even really know. I mean, there's just a lot of good Mexican fighters that I can even name right now, like Carlos, Zarate, Ruben Olivares, who else? Chuchillo Castillo. I think I'm saying his name correctly. Yeah. I gotta go back and find that guy's name for you guys. Who else? There's another fighter. I think his name is like Ricardo. Man, I totally forgot what his last name is. His first name is Ricardo, and I think the last name is Espinoza. I think it's Ricardo Espinoza. I totally forgot his name, but if you guys know who I'm talking about, he's a pretty good, decent fighter. I like Juan Manuel Marquez. Who else? I also like. Hmm. Man, I mean, like, honestly, there's just way too much to count. So I'm not gonna go into like the whole crazy list of like good Mexican fighters, but it's like clearly you can see that there's just a huge classical list of fighters that have actually done very well. But I think the thing about it is like they were there because they were put in a good position to have that good marquee fight to be known. So therefore, once they got their opportunity, then they got their, they got their rise to fame because they knew what they were doing to be in that particular position. But in terms of the Afro Mexican talent, why aren't they being pushed? Why aren't they being given any opportunities? And I want to say the good reason for it is probably just lack of funding. Maybe there's just not a lot of gyms out there that actually really get enough black talent out of Mexico. And I'm pretty sure the black people, they are, they can be good. It's just that, maybe to their socioeconomic lifestyle, they're just not able to really afford boxing, at that particular level. And I don't blame them because it's like, it's very tough, especially trying to get young kids out of the poor areas within Mexico. Probably a lot of those, young black kids are probably not even able to even think about getting a pair of boxing gloves to actually even think about training. So, I mean, ideally per se, if they were to be like heavily invested and black people can actually like invest more into the sport where you could see like a lot of great up and coming black talent, especially on like the male or female side, like that would be huge. You know what I'm saying? Like, you would have like, like a copy and paste version, of like, let's just say Afro American talent, but it would just be like the Mexican version. But a lot of those fighters would probably just probably just take a lot of pages from like the Afro American talent, and then boom, like you already have like such a massive pool of great competition that can easily just come right into the mix. And then Mexican boxing would be huge. Like, I mean, especially when you get like some really good black Mexican talent, like, especially like the really good strong athletic kids that are probably fit for soccer. But it's like, you could actually take that talent and you could morph them into like a massive super juggernaut type of fighter. But I mean, that's just all speculation. I mean, I'm pretty sure that the talent can be out there. And I mean, it's a lot of investing because, but the gyms that have to like really get those kids out there to even like think about training is like a whole different animal. Because it's like one, that the families that are having to probably be out there on their own, they have to like really think about, taking care of their livestock. So, especially if they're having to like, let's just say be farmers or anything like that. I don't blame them because, that's like, that's more important. Oh, I'm so sorry. Let me pause this. All right, I'm back. So, yeah, that's pretty much like the whole deal for Mexican boxing. Um, I personally think that if it were to be that big, um, what I would do in order to make Mexican boxing really, oh man, oh I'm sorry. Yeah, like what I would do in order to make Mexican boxing really good is that I would definitely invest in a lot of, you know, good, supportive, boxing training programs for all the little children to get involved and start fighting at a young age. Kind of similar to what you see with soccer programs with like a lot of good up and coming soccer talent that's getting good. Um, I mean, like another good thing is like think about it with like basketball, right? I mean, Mexico is definitely growing in basketball, but if Mexico had like I don't know, if they had like that that extra boost in financial support to actually develop a really strong talent pool for just specifically basketball, um you will see like a whole bunch of great Mexican basketball players, and more Mexicans would make it to the NBA based on skill, and they would actually like produce a really strong demographic, depending on where that particular I guess like basically where that particular line of skill actually draws itself from. So yeah, personally with me, I think when it comes to just boxing, you could have like the black version of like Sugar Ray Leonard, or just like Marvin Hagler's, and who knows, there could be like a black Canelo Alvarez out there. You know what I'm saying? There could be some kid out there that could punch real hard, and he might be like another, you know, I don't even know, maybe like another Mexican version of Corey Spinks. Like you never know. I mean, if you want to invest in good talent, you have to like bring the community together so they can get that talent to be motivated, because obviously coming from poor backgrounds is very difficult to kind of get yourself off that particular struggle, so you could actually give more motivation to the children to actually get up and fight. And then on top of that, when it comes to like the amateurs, I mean the amateurs is also very terrible with like how not a lot of fighters really get paid at all. Oh, and then therefore they're having to kind of like go out of their way, taking a lot of big risk and a lot of big fights that they take up against really good talent. So that's really why the amateurs is not really always to be the right path to kind of get kids going. But especially in Mexico, a lot of those younger kids that are trying to go pro early, they usually end up trying to train in the gym for quite a long time, and then once they're ready to take their professional debut fight at like, let's just say 15 or 16, then those children end up peaking a lot sooner in their career. I mean, it's not always to be like that, but in certain cases, that's usually how most Mexican fighters are really coming about. But I think the African talent within Mexico, or the Afro Hispanic talent, however you want to call it, it's definitely there. I mean, you know, anybody trying to be very disingenuous to be like, oh no, like you're just saying that just to try to like promote some nonsensical diversity nonsense. And it's not even that. It's just like I have like a really deep passion for the sport. And I think like when it comes to just Mexican talent, like I think Mexican boxing is very huge to expand its financial market value to a lot of people within their communities. But it's just like obviously due to a lot of uncertain economic circumstances that affects the Mexican economy as a whole. Not a lot of Mexicans really have that time and effort to go out of their way to invest their children to go out and start boxing, because boxing is a very you know well, I mean, as many people put it, boxing is a poor man's sport. But it's like when you're trying to get like your kid to want to compete and actually become a world champion, I mean, that's a very you know, difficult leap for your child to get to that level, because, that takes extreme months of training, a lot of focus, a lot of separation from the outside life. So you have to be in the gym, you got to be consistent. And that's always the toughest part, because, especially trying to get that young kid that could be great in the sport to be focused from such a young age, but he comes from like a very poor environment. I mean, that's not a lot for that kid to really have any good motivation to actually want it to be better, because they go through such mental trauma of being like, okay, like I'm doing all this training, but it's like I'm thinking too much about how much risk could be put involved. So that's where a lot of what the giving up mindset comes in, because it's like you don't want something happening to you, but you can't provide to your family as you get older. So um yeah, I think Mexican boxing can very well grow. um if there was to be a plethora of like really good Mexican fighters that were black, um, it can very well happen. And I mean, it has happened before. I mean, there were some black Mexican fighters from the old past. Some of them were Cuban per se that actually settled within Mexico. But I think like, specifically for just those that are black Mexican born, that are just black Mexicans, just probably like more, homogenous African Mexicans, where they're probably mixed with like Spanish blood, like it still doesn't matter. I mean, but they're still Mexicans at the end of the day. But either way, like the Afro Mexican population having a presence within boxing would be really huge, and I think it would be really fun to see. Having like some really good strong level talent where a lot of those people can really like help themselves grow a lot faster in the sport, and they don't have to like hold on. Gotta pause the video. Alright, I'm back. So yeah, back to what I was saying about Afro Mexican talent. Like, there's so much growth that they can go about doing, and if they do that, it would actually bring such a big influence to the next level of great generational talent, and the matchups that they would get into would be so dope, especially like having like the black Mexican versus brown skin Mexican battles, or white Mexicans, like it doesn't matter, man. Like, I mean, it's all, it would all be fun to see, but that'd be so dope, you know what I'm saying? Like, there would be such a huge like market for the boxing world to see Afro Mexican talent rise to the occasion, and it can blow up on the female side and on the male side. There's so many doors that can be open in that particular regard, but it's just like, what the fact is that there's just clearly like a financial discrepancy that's put in place that can't be like achieved. So that's really where it's at right now, and I'd say sooner than later the change will come. It would be nice to see another fighter like Saul Montana, but far more skilled and far more technical. Saul Montana obviously did win a title, with the IBA cruiserweight title back in his day, with his with his skill set. But just imagine somebody that has like a good like Floyd Mayweather like style, but it's like a prototype style. And I mean, a lot of these fighters can really grow a lot faster with where they're at, with all the great Afro American talent that they can look up to and get influence off of it, and it would be mad fun. I think where it stands right now, like that would be the future to actually see. So I mean, let me know what you guys think. Do you think black Afro Mexican talent would be good if if Mexico actually had that financial support and the fan support too. I think overall, that the fans would definitely support that the Afro Mexican talent if they actually got good and they actually did what they did. So I mean, there's so many endless opportunities that you can go about doing it, and it would personally with me, I think it would be huge. You know, I think that's how it would go about settling things, and that's just how I would see it. So yeah, let me know what you guys think. I think Afro Mexican talent would definitely be on the rise if that actually ever happens in the future. And yeah, that's pretty much it, man. Hope you guys enjoy it. Hope you guys enjoy this this commentary talk, and shout out to Boxing Fights simulations. This was a pretty good match between Floyd Mayweather and Terrence Crawford. And yeah, man, I'm out. I'll see you guys later. I got more videos coming out, and I'll see you guys around pretty soon. Shout out to the mighty LDBC. I'll see you guys. Peace.